Hello to YouTube. We are going to do probably 2 of these today because I got a lot to get into. I was just telling the Urban View audience, and welcome. You're listening to Lurie Daniel Favors on SiriusXM's Urban View. I was just talking to the audience about the fact that we had a whole host of things to get into this morning, and then I found out that Sean Diddy Combs has been found guilty of a couple of things. He's going to be going through some things. I don't know what the details are, but I'm sure those of you who are thinking about this or who have been following the case, if any of you are, that may be of interest to you. We don't usually do a lot of pop culture on this show, although I feel like we kind of should. The main reason I'm on today for this particular mini segment, and YouTube, this is going to be a quick one, and we'll probably do another one later on in the show. So make sure you're following, liking, and subscribing. But there has been a raging question about whether or not Black people can be deported in this country. And this is important because now that we see that in the state of Florida, they are building out what they're calling Alligator Alcatraz, which I call Alligator Auschwitz, we should ask some real questions, because when people who inspired the Nazis are creating whole ass concentration camps, we should just be aware of what that means as those who descended from a group of people who had been captured and enslaved in this country. Now, yes, we have far more descendant or ancestors who were not captured and enslaved in this country that we should also be drawing on, but it's just a little too close on the nose. So there is a video clip. I don't actually think we're going to have time to play it because it's like a 3-minute clip. But there is a brother from EduPost, and he talks about the fact that there has been this question as to whether or not Donald Trump could deport Black people. And that's actually the wrong question. And this is going to be important because we're already seeing a number of folks who are a part of some of the movements that were very effectively communicating during the campaign. Don't vote for that lady because she wasn't really Black. Or this is the same sort of people who took 3-minute clips of Kamala Harris saying something that ended with, "I can't only do something for Black people." And they pretended that was the entire conversation when she was really saying that if I only do something for Black people, it's going to get struck down by the courts, which we all know because we see and we experience it in real time. But there is a question that community or for folks who were in that part of our community keep raising. And it's not even necessarily a question. It's more of a statement that everything we see happening to the I almost said Indigenous community. To the immigrant community, not the Indigenous community, although some of the first people who were arrested by ICE under this new era were Native Americans. Can't tell a Native American from a Mexican, can you? It's a little hard to do that when you're just looking at people's skin complexion. But there is this statement, or there is this belief that I just want to disabuse really, really quickly. This ain't going to be long. I got about 2 minutes before we welcome in a guest and move on. But there is a belief amongst some poorly educated members of our community that because we have claims to citizenship, Black people cannot be deported. And I just want to sadly disabuse you of that notion, because saying Black people can't be deported because we're citizens is not really the answer to the right question. The right question is not, can Donald Trump deport Black people? Because if you're asking, could Donald Trump deport Black people legally, the answer would be no. But because Donald Trump does not operate within the confines of legal restrictions, the proper question to ask would be, can Donald Trump deport Black people illegally? Because the reality is he can. And one of the reasons he can is because of the Supreme Court decision that just came down that talked about the fact that it was shrouded in birthright citizenship language. And we talked a little bit about that. I think I did a podcast episode on the birthright citizenship aspects of that as well. But in that case, it was really about legal power or authority of the courts to put limits on the president, to put limits on the executive. So you all may remember when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were fighting to get people student loan relief, and they tried to go through Congress. That didn't really work so well. And then Joe Biden was pushed successfully by the voters and the constituents to begin doing student loan debt relief of a variety of sorts. We didn't push them hard or fast enough because we should have got everybody's forgiven. But that's what electoral politics looks like. You have a candidate or an elected official, and we, the people, have to make our voices heard. And that was helpful because it pushed Joe Biden to be open to the idea that more and more people should get access to student loan debt relief. How did that stop? And you remember how that stopped? Student loan debt relief stopped because Republicans went to courts. They forum shopped, which means they went to courts. They searched for judges who they knew would be favorable to them. Shout out to Judge, what is his name? Matthew Kazmierek in Texas. You are a good one for MAGA. They would file cases in courts like his to get an opinion that would create a nationwide injunction. A nationwide injunction is a legal tool that basically prevents whatever was whatever was enjoined joined on a national level. So when President Biden issued student loan debt relief and it had a nationwide injunction applied to it, nobody could get student loan debt relief. When Joseph Biden and the Democrats included $5 billion in their Inflation Reduction Act to give to black farmers to make up for the fact that the USDA had essentially for the entirety of the 1900s robbed black farmers of their land, white farmers who had been getting benefits that entire time knew they didn't deserve that money, but they went to court and they got a nationwide injunction that prevented the courts from being able to, prevented the Democrats from being able to distribute that money to the farmers who deserved it. Nationwide injunctions are a very important tool because they put limits on presidential power. And Republicans had no issue with that when it was a Democrat in office, but now the Supreme Court ruled that you can't do a nationwide injunction. So judges can only protect people who are appearing in the cases in front of them. So if the president of the country issues an executive order, that's going to hurt people in every single state, and you are in a state where your attorney general is going to sue about that thing, then you would be protected if the courts say there's going to be an injunction for the states that sued. But if you live in a Republican state, you're not going to get those protections, because if the Republicans are not going to go to court to file to protect your rights because they are in alignment with the removal of your rights, well, then who going to check them, boo? You ain't got no options, because most of these things you do not have what's called a private right of action, the ability to sue on your own behalf. The attorney general of your state or the government has to, or the federal government has to do it for you. So when it comes to the questions of whether or not black people can be deported, because now that alligator Auschwitz is up, they plan on having people there this week. I've heard reports already that it started flooding, that they are going to have these people out in Florida sun in 100-degree plus weather in the Everglades. No, they're intense, so they're outside exposed to mosquitoes and every other element and of bug in the swamp region, and it's surrounded by alligators and wildlife. And Donald Trump has said on the record that I guess if people try to escape, they'll just get eaten by the wildlife. And MAGA is really happy about that. The reason this is important is because black people, Black Americans, need to be on the lookout. You need to be aware of what's happening right now, because nobody could deport you legally. But no one has ever credibly accused Donald Trump of willing to stay within the confines of the law to do what it is that he wants, particularly if being outside of the law is going to allow him to basically benefit by supporting whiteness. So as we see a concentration camp being built, as we see that they have already revitalized the slave trade, because if I can kidnap you off the street and sell you to a foreign entity, and you are forced to then work for that foreign entity for the entirety of your life, that is a slave trade. It may not be the same as a transatlantic slave trade. It's not the African slave trade, but it is indeed a slave trade. And we need not quibble on the language. I know a lot of people get offended. It wasn't the transatlantic slave trade. We know that, baby, but slave trades exist. We called it transatlantic to distinguish it from the other sorts of slave trades that were happening. So what we got to ask ourselves is, what does this look like in real life? It looks like your child is out on the street and they fit a description of an undocumented or other immigrant type of person, and they're snatched not by your local police precinct. They're snatched by the bounty hunters. They're snatched by the slave catchers of today, and they're sent somewhere. Maybe you know where your uncle and them was sent. Maybe you don't. Maybe you know where your auntie was sent. Maybe you don't. But it's not like you're going to get access to due process, because when you have been captured in a bounty hunter system, in a fugitive slave era system, you don't get no due process. That's why during this fugitive slave era, when black people were captured and kidnapped off the street, exactly like what's happening right now, they couldn't go to court and testify. You weren't even allowed as a black person to bear witness against a white person in court. So we need to be clear that the questions we ask need to be the correct questions. No, Donald Trump cannot deport black people legally. And yes, that means that he has the full panoply of this entire federal government to do everything that he wants illegally, because everything he has done up until this point has been in contravention of the courts. He has flouted their rules. And so we got to ask ourselves, what would it look like to create an underground railroad in Project 2025 America? They are building and have erected concentration camps on this land. So they ain't even got to deport you anywhere. They will just send you to a camp, and maybe your family will know where you are. Maybe they won't. But as long as we're quibbling about the fact that ain't no way that Donald Trump can deport me, I got lineage, and both my parents are born here, because every time I say this, somebody inevitably says, you know, you only concerned about this because your mother's Jamaican. My daddy wasn't. My dad is Black American from New York. So for all the people, particularly those of you who come to the reparations hearings who are very upset, we had a sister the last time in a reparations hearing. She was like, we know your opinion. You Jamaican. I was like, well, half. half Jamaican. But my daddy is Black American. So, and I know it pisses them off when I say this. I'm going to get half of my, if there's ever reparations, I'm going to get half from here. And I'm going to get half from the Queen of England, because that's just how these things go. I don't mind working within them rules. My point is this. We are so busy in our community not asking the right questions that we're losing time to prepare. I don't know what it looks like to create an underground railroad under these circumstances, or frankly any other. And because the big bitch ass bill got passed last night, and that big bitch ass bill out of the Senate, it's now back in the House, that big bitch ass bill also includes more funding for ICE than the entirety of the Marines. ICE is going to have a larger budget than the entire United States Marine Corps. What does an underground railroad look like in that circumstance? Got any ideas? You think they're going to care about your claims of lineage, or that you can trace your ancestry back to those who were on plantations? Do you think they care? I don't think they care. But we better, because it's going to be a hot summer. Did we remind ourselves that it's summertime? And we are, what is it, July 19th, July 20th is the end of the 180-day playbook? Have you seen all of the barricades going up in Washington, D.C.? What they planning for? What they doing? I don't know. We don't even need to delve into the realm of conspiracy theories, because the reality of what we're experiencing should sufficiently concern us that we begin asking ourselves questions. At what point did our ancestors begin creating underground railroads? At what point did they realize the Underground Railroad needed to be multifold and needed to have multiple parts and needed to expand? And at what point were they making mistakes in the creation of the Underground Railroad that they had to then correct? How did they do that? These are questions we should ask ourselves, because these are lessons that are going to be really, really relevant as time goes forward. YouTube, I got to hang up with y'all now, but I'll be back later on. I'm actually doing 2 lives today. I'm not going to tell Urban View when the next one's coming, but I'll be back. We got some more to talk about. But right now, we are going to be welcoming Imani Gandhi to these airwaves. Bye, YouTube. I'm sorry. I love y'all. See y'all in just a little bit. We are about to welcome Imani Gandhi to these airwaves because, I'm about to hit the wrong button. Lord have mercy. Amina,